Ladies and gentlemen, the current Boston Bruins are a great success. The last, going back to the late 60s, they rarely don't make the playoffs, and even if they lose, they have a big fan base across North America. Some like them for their goon plays, some like them for their goaltending, their tenacity, the popularity of the old 1970 Bruins, even the Oras Mazzito years. But we're going to talk about a season where the franchise was in deep trouble. It's the 65-65 Boston Bruins. They only won 21 games that season in a 70-game schedule. They're almost minus 100 on offense. Only scored 166 goals in 70 games. Now, coached by Milt Schmidt, Leo Boivin, Johnny Busick, John Johnson, Arnold Kortenbach were the captains and assistant. Lynn Patrick was the GM. Now, they're at the venerable Boston Arena. Busick led all players with 55 points, including 26 goals. Terrible Ted Green at 156 minutes on penalties, while Eddie Johnson led the team in wins with 11. Now, in the offseason, Patrick made a number of moves in a continuing attempt to improve team scoring. Doug Moens was traded to the Blackhawks for Ed McDonald and Reggie Fleming. Jerry Topazzini was also sent to Chicago in a package deal in which the Bruins acquired Murray Balfour. Both Moens and Topazzini had been Bruins for over a decade and had particularly shone in the 1958 playoffs. Now, future Hockey Hall of Famer Ken Dryden was picked in the third round of 64 NHL draft by Boston, but his rights were traded weeks later to the Montreal Canadiens for Guy Allen and Paul Reed, two players who never skated in the major leagues. Now, the 18th NHL All-Star Game was held in Toronto on October 10th. A team of All-Stars that included three Bruins, Leo Boivin, Murray Oliver, and Johnny Busick, played against the Stanley Cup champion Maple Leafs. The All-Stars won 3-2 with Oliver scoring the winning goal, assisted by Busick. Now, the Bruins were so hopeful that the acquisition of Balfour and McDonald would strengthen the offense, and both were 20 goal scorers in Chicago, but the scoring issue had been a problem since the 61 season. Now, Tommy Williams, of course, was back from the injury that ended his 64 season, and future Canuck Arnold Kurtenbach had success on the second line the year before and made assistant captain. Gary Dornhofer again was looking to build on his brief but impressive rookie season, where he played on the top line with Oliver and Johnny Busick. Junior sensation Ron Schock made a team out of training camp after leading the Niagara Falls Flyers in scoring. Andy Heberton was eventually sold to the Portland Buckaroos of the Western Hockey League. Except for the departure of Moens, the defense remained largely unchanged from the previous year. Ted Green was the new leader of the Bruins blue line and seen as a replacement for Leo the Bouncer Boivin, who was in his penultimate season in Boston. Veteran Tom Johnson was a stabilizing presence, as the former Hab also was aided by Bob McCord, who many felt Bill could build on his regular rookie season. Eddie Westfall, the future Islander captain, and Reggie Fleming, before he had a very up and down next decade in hockey, both switched between forward and defense. And of course, Eddie Johnson remained the Bruins' starting netminder. This was before Achievers. Now, despite the changes, the season started disastrous with no wins in October. In the majority of the games, the Bruins were outshot and demanded only 10 counters in 9 contests. Schock had 2 goals, while the bow line of Busick, Oliver, and Williams had 3 goals. The first win came on November 1st, 64, and the Bruins had their best month of the season, going 5-4-2. After no goals in 15 games and complaining of fatigue, Balfour was sent to the minors and died of a lung tumor in May 65. Dornhofer was relegated after 0 goals in 20 games, and on November 29, 65, former Flame sensation Bob Leiter suffered a fractured left arm and was lost for the season. He wouldn't play another full year in the NHL for another 7 years. Wayne Baxter, Bill Nibbs, and Wayne Rivers were recalled, and all 3 would play their only full NHL seasons in 65. Now, Don Ory was also recalled, playing the remainder of the season and 7 more for the Bruins. The inconsistent play continued in December despite contributions from the call-ups, particularly one Wayne Rivers. The bow line was outplayed on many nights, with Busick and Oliver finishing the season minus 25 and minus 30 respectively. January saw brief call-ups for the first NHL games for Wayne Cashman, Joe Watson, and Bill Goldsworthy, as Dean Prentice and Ron Schock were lost to injury. Now, Goldsworthy played in the January 7-65 game in Boston against the Red Wings, which the Bruins were dominating 5-0 in the third period. Gordie Howe scored 2 power play goals, and with 5 minutes remaining, caught Billy Nibbs, who scored the game's first goal, with his head down. Nibbs' head struck the ice, and he appeared to be badly injured. Howe was giving a major penalty and on his way to the dressing room was doused with beer by the enraged fans. Police insisted on escorting Howe to his hotel to ensure his safety. Nibs recovered and played the next game. Now get this. Ulf Sterner, the first European-trained player to play in the NHL, made his debut for the Rangers versus the Bruins on January 27th. In Toronto on January 30th, Eddie Johnson was too old to play, so Jack Norris was called up. However, Norris's goalie equipment was stolen from the hotel, forcing Johnson to play. The Bruins not only lost 6-1, but Johnson's hand was broken in the game, causing him to miss the remainder of the season. Norris played the next game wearing Johnson's equipment and won a respectable 10-11-12 with one shutout. Usually, he wore number 17. Now, during the third period of the February 4th 65 game versus Detroit, Bill Gadsby swung his stick at Reggie Fleming after Fleming hit him with the puck. The two engaged in a stick-swinging duel, but neither was seriously injured. Both were giving match penalties, and Boston fans threw punches at several Red Wings players over the glass. Late in the game, Gordie Howe cut Don Ory with a high stick. When the game finished, fans poured beer at Detroit trainer Ross Wilson, which led to a scuffle in a walkway by the Red Wings bench. Bob McCord was sent to the minors, never to play for the Bruins again, while Bob Wojtowicz was called up for the next game and will play the remainder of the season. He finished with 12 points in 21 games and would become a Bruins regular next season. Jeannot Gilbert was called up next, resulting in 7 rookies playing in the Bruins lineup. Now, the February 21st 65 game versus Chicago saw a bench-clearing brawl in which former Bruin Doug Bowens fought Earl Kurtenbach. Now, that's a tilt I would like to see. Bad blood carried over the next time the teams met on February 28th, as Johnson's leg was cut by a skate, ending his career. Wayne Maxter was giving 2 misconducts, and though Chicago had 8 power plays, the Bruins rallied for a 5-4 victory. Johnson would remain in the Bruins organization for 30 years, coach a team to the 72 Stanley Cup, and retire as a vice president. Now, the Bruins were out of the playoffs entering March, but made a run at the finishing out of last place. On March 25th, 65, the Bruins lost 10-3 to Detroit, with Ted Lindsay scoring the last goal of his career against Jack Norris. Despite winning 5 games in a month and having more wins than the Rangers, the Bruins still finished in the cellar with 48 points, the same as the previous season, as New York had more ties and 4 more points. So this is the recap again. 40-23-7 for Detroit, 36-23-11 for Montreal, Chicago 34-28-8, Toronto 30-26-14. Of course, that year Montreal won the Cup. Rangers 20-38-12, 52 points, but despite having more victories, 21-43-6. But Rudd really hurt them again, almost minus 100. And they were the second least penalized team in the league, which is quite bizarre. But in October of their discontent, the big problem too, this is what happened. 6-2 to the Rangers lost, 3-0 to the Blackhawks, 7-2 to the Maple Leafs, 3-1 to the Habs, a 2-2 tie with Toronto, 4-0 to the Red Wings, 3-1 to the Rangers, 2-0 to the Red Wings, and of course the Halloween debacle, 6-2 to Montreal in October. And the big one, January, was shitty as well. They only won 4 games in a month. They went from literally 8-20-4 to 11-33-4. So you do the math. 2-13 in a month. Now they did finish very strong, winning 5 of the last 8 games, but the writing was on the wall. And you weren't really blown out of most of the games. Most of them were close, but when it was a bummer, it was a bummer. So we're going to go over a little bit of rough stats again, just to make sure all bases are covered. And I believe Reggie Fleming's different incidents involving Boston really hurt him as well. It was a rough time for the NHL because this expansion was still a little bit ways off. And actually, this was weird because this was the year that Montreal, after again 5 years away from the Cup, won it back. So that was a very significant season. So let's look at rough stats again, just to make sure everything is covered. Again, there were 6-8 against Chicago, 3-10-1 against Detroit, 3-10-1 Montreal, 5-8-1 against the Rangers, 4-7-3 against Toronto. So rough stats again. Busick 55 points, Oliver at 43 points, 20 goals. Reggie Fleming, defense left wing, 41 points. Teddy Green, 35 points, played every game. Tommy Williams, 34 points. Eddie Westfall, 27 points, 12 goals. Curtin Back, 6 goals, 26 points. Dean Prentice, 23 points in 31 games. Wayne Rivers, 23 points, 50 games, 6 goals. A disappointing season for Ab McDonald, 998. Billy Nibbs, 710-7. Wayne Maxter, 7-6-13. Leo Boivin, tail end of his career, 3-10-13. Wojtowicz, 2-10-12. Ronnie Schock, 4-7-11. Forbes, 6-4-10. Tommy Johnson, 0-9, of course, the injury. Bob McCord, 6 assists, 43 games. Don Orey, 2-3-5-47. Bobby Leiter, 3 goals in 18 games. Balfour, 2 assists in 15 contests. Dornhofer, only 1 assist in 20 games. Jeannot Gilbert, 4 games. The future superstar with the Flyers, Joe Watson, 4 games. Wayne Cashman, he's first called up, 1 game. Billy Goldsworthy, and Eddie Johnson and Jack Norris. I don't know if anybody has wore number 17 as a goalie in this. And again, trading Ken Dryden, kind of freaky if you ask me. But I mean, Cheevers was on the way. So ironically, ladies and gentlemen, Norris, 3.70 average, and he did shut out their opponents 4 times. So this was before Bobby Orr, this was before Esposito came in, Stanfield and all that. It was a sad time in Boston. So anybody is disappointed in Boston's play in 23-24, just remember, for most of the 1960s, it was a dead zone until Bobby Orr arrived. And he became, within 5 years of this season, he won the Stanley Cup. I think that's tremendous. You talk about a 5-year plan. It was almost a 4-year plan, because he could easily won in 68 or 69 if he could beat Montreal, but he had a hard time. And the only reason why he won in 70, because he didn't have to play Montreal. Montreal didn't make the playoffs. In 71, you know what happened there. But like I said, the big deal, this was long before Esposito. If you were a fan, by the way, the Boston Bruins 65, I'd like to hear from you. What it was like watching the Bruins almost lose every key game of the season. It must have been rough, because Boston was a Stanley Cup contender for most of the 50s before, again, the transition to the money teams like the Leafs and the Habs in the 60s. Thanks for listening. If you like what we're doing here, give us a like, comment, subscribe, or share.